Today I'm going to talk to you about my experience dealing with main agents on electric vehicles and why the terrible experience that you get from main agents is common across all main dealers across all over the world, and what you can do as customers and also dealer networks to fix this issue. Now, I don't want to throw any dealer sites or any sales staff under the bus, so no names of companies or sites or manufacturers will be mentioned in this video, but it's pretty much common across the entire spectrum of used and new car dealers when dealing with electric vehicles, apart from a very small hand-selected number of dealers. It doesn't matter if they're selling EVs or not. There is people selling EVs in new and used who do not have a clue. Now, before I get into my experiences of what happened, let's get into what's actually changed when it comes to selling an EV. Now, a long time ago here in the UK and a lot of places in Europe, you used to go into a showroom and ask about an electric vehicle to be told, "We have this diesel alternative, sir." That doesn't happen anymore, and it's not actually because of staff training, it's actually to do with CO2 markets, and selling low CO2 cars and electric vehicles in particular means that manufacturers hit CO2 targets and dealers hit CO2 targets, which means that they need to sell these EVs now to hit their bonuses and volume levels so the manufacturer doesn't pay big fines. So what actually happened? Well, I made some contacts about some electric vehicles I was interested in buying, and a lot of the companies, and this one in particular, told me that the electric car expert would ring me back shortly, and I was quite surprised. I was going to speak to someone who was trained, understood electric vehicles, maybe not as much as me because of my background knowledge of doing it as, a job for selling cars and also a job here on YouTube, but someone who actually understood the cars better than the average salesman. I was really happy about speaking to someone who actually understood them. But boy, was I in for a shock. Now, before receiving the call from this electric car expert, I had some questions that I wanted to ask about the car. Now, I knew quite a lot of them, but some of them were brand specific or optional specific, and I wanted to know the car that they had in, did it meet these specifications and did it have this stuff on? However, this expert then started on his sales patter about how their brand did this and did that and did this better than other manufacturers, basically giving me a load of rubbish. None of it was true, a lot of it was made up, and a lot of the facts were actually incorrect about what their car can and can't do. However, one thing that really stuck out was when they started quoting the range figures. Now, they told me WLTP range and told me, "You'll get this many miles out of this car," instead of just telling me, "This is what the WLTP figure is, this is what we expect you to get in a summer driving, and this is what we expect to get in the winter." No guide of anything like that. It was just, it does this range. And I said, "It won't do that range." And they went, "No, it will. This is the WLTP. This is what it will do." And as an EV driver, I know that's simply not true. But if you were a new buyer to EVs and didn't do a lot of research, didn't watch YouTube or do any sort of research on the car, and just basically went in blind thinking that the main dealer will know more about electric cars than you, that's not a figure that you want quoting. You want some reassurance and some sort of honesty that the car, quoted for doing this, but realistically, you're only going to get said number. And the reason I think that manufacturers should quote the actual range quoted that car can do is it makes more sense for people buying an EV. And I also do think that we should see more of this published. Now, myself, as a used car dealer, when people buy an electric vehicle off me, as many people can tell you who have bought an electric car off me, I will tell you the range it can do realistically and what I've achieved out of a car and what I know other people have achieved out of a car. And I'll also give you some data from somewhere like EV Database if it's a car that I've not had long enough to do enough range tests or real world life driving tests on it. Now, another dealer I know who is a main agent is a bloke called Will Adams. Will also, again, same as me when it comes to EVs, quotes the realistic real world range that he gets out of the cars, and he is physically tested some of the cars that he's had and quoted the range. And in fact, sometimes if it's a car I've not had or he's not had, we've got text messages between each other saying, what's the range that you've got out of this, Nick? What can be expected? So he can tell his customers and I can tell my customers when they buy an EV, this is the realistic range that you will see. However, when visiting the EV specialist, the problems of what he told me did not stop there. There was more and more errors coming up. And one of them was, what was the charge speed the car could handle? I mean, this should be a basic fact. They should know this. They should know exactly what the car should charge at, shouldn't they? So I asked, is the car a 7 kilowatt or 11 kilowatt version? Because there is two options on this car, and depending on model year and other things, it can be different. So I asked, is the one that you've got in stock 11 or 7? And I was quoted back, we don't do an 11 or 7. I was given back the motor's kilowatt power, which converts roughly into brake horsepower, but that wasn't the question I was asking. But does it get any worse? Well, yeah. Now at this point, I was getting frustrated and I thought it's about time I fessed up. So I told them that I'm a used car dealer specialising in electric vehicles and that my second job is doing YouTube specialising in telling people and learning about electric vehicles. To which point the electric car expert said, how am I doing? Now, being English, we don't like to complain. Not unless we have a worldwide audience on YouTube, that is. But we don't like to complain, so I just basically told the salesman he was doing fine and left it as that. Now, a lot of people in the UK and in Europe were not big complainers like Americans. You Americans do like to be honest with your opinions and issues, which us Brits don't tend to do. We tend to do it more at manufacturer level, but not when it comes to face-to-face or personal levels with dealers where it affects people's jobs. We are very, very tight-lipped about being honest with issues. It even happens at restaurant. We can eat a terrible meal at a restaurant and never complain and pay and tip without any issues, and that's just the British way. So if you're a main agent and you're sending feedback forms to customers, it's unlikely that you're going to be picking up that some of your sales staff may need retraining, but maybe you should do your own sort of mini sort of conduction on them and test their electric car knowledge, because if it's the same as pretty much 20 dealers I rang, your staff definitely have not got a clue on your products. And there is a couple of ways you can sort this, which we're going to mention at the end of the video. But of course, I went to go and buy an EV, and could it get any worse? Well, yeah. Pointed out to us that if we bought the car, it would include a free home charger. And I said, no, it's fine. I don't need a home charger. I've already got one at home. And I was then told, before I could say my next line, I was interrupted and said, yes, but our charger, which we supply for free, is one that will charge your car. Meaning that they thought that the Renault Zoe that was sat outside would not work on the same plug socket at home, the same charger that I already had. Now, if this was a Nissan Leaf Gen 1, then he may have a slight point. But it isn't. It's a Type 2. Now, forgiveness that they might not know this, but surely people should know that electric vehicle chargers are pretty much the same across the board, and unless it's in the special circumstances, it wouldn't fit. But most electric car owners who already have an EV will know the type of plug socket they have on their car, and should know that when they buy a new EV, if their current socket fits their current car. Now, at this point is the funniest line I have ever heard from my wife. The salesman walks away. Me and my wife are sat there with the car, and she looks at me and turns to me and goes, I think I know more than this salesman about electric vehicles. Now, my lovely wife has no clue about anything when it comes to electric vehicles, apart from it's a mode of transport that she uses to get to work. Her EV knowledge starts where she plugs it in, unplugs it, drives it to work, and drives it home. She hasn't got really any interest in charge speed, charge networks, anything like that. She doesn't really care. It's just a mode of transport. She knows she plugs it in at home and it fills up, and she wakes up in the morning, she unplugs it, and she can drive it. That's pretty much my wife's interest in cars, electric vehicles. It pretty much ends driving it and does it fit her needs for getting to work. That's pretty much it. So the fact that she knew more than an electric vehicle expert at a showroom says quite a lot. Now, this is not just main dealers. Like I said before, it happens at used dealers, and I know it happens at used dealers because I've had a slurry of customers all telling me exactly that they've been to other dealers to buy a used EV, and the other dealer hasn't got a clue. In fact, last week I just sold a Nissan Leaf to a customer, and the customer said to me, "We bought from you because you could tell us the range, you could tell us what plug it used, you could give us a slurry of information that we needed to know to buy an electric vehicle, and that's why we've chosen to buy the electric vehicle off you than another dealer." So it is losing people sales. So if you're a main or used agent, you are possibly losing out on customers just because your staff or you do not have a clue about the vehicle you're selling. And this problem is likely going to get worse for a minute because there is currently some online retailers that sell EVs online with no human interaction. They literally will, you buy a car online, you pick the car online, they deliver it to your house with a delivery driver who also hasn't got a clue about electric vehicles, and it comes off the truck and it is up to you to fend for yourself. Now, for an existing EV owner, that might suit your needs because you already understand EVs. But if you're a new EV owner, this unpersonal, unnice touch is just not going to sell you an EV. Now, another dealer I know who sells, new electric vehicles sold a new electric vehicle to a customer quite some way away from me, and his delivery driver dropped it off. Well, his delivery driver is an EV user, so he gave the customer a little lesson on how to use their EV and how the charger works, etc. when they picked it up. And dealing with customers and companies that actually understand electric vehicles is the way you need to support businesses. You should only support a business that looks after you and treats you as a customer. So if you are a customer, vote with your feet. Now, there's plenty of new and used dealers selling EVs at the moment, but my advice is look for the ones that actually understand EVs, ones that will give you information without even you asking for it. So if you ring a dealer about an EV and start talking to them for a bit, and they give you information like, this is what you expect to see in the winter, this is what you can expect to see in the summer, and they offer that information without you having to ask for it, they're the type of dealers that you want to deal with. Dealers that are actually engaged and interested in selling EVs, not ones who've just bought it to make a quick buck or profit off you. Ones that actually understand the market and want to help you buy an EV. I know many dealers, including myself, that will actually give you advice on charge points and other things, but please don't just take this information for free. If you're ringing a dealer and you take up his time to buy or get information off him to buy an EV, then try and buy that car off that EV dealer. Most of us dealers, we tend to be fairly competitive with other people selling EVs, but there's a couple of dealers that will undercut us because they've had their EV, I don't know, for about 5 months because people don't give them any advice on when buying an EV, and then you'll get someone who will just buy it because it's cheap and won't get any of that help, will absorb it from another dealer. So support the dealers that are willing to support you as a customer and try and get more people into EVs. Thank you very, very much for watching this week's video. Check out my other videos. Don't forget to click subscribe. Thank you very, very much, and I'll see you again next week. Goodbye.